Hello and welcome back to the channel. Before we get started, we'd just like to take a moment to remind you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. At the time of production, we are on 964 subscribers and we'd love it if we could reach 1,000 by Christmas. Also, if you're enjoying what you see, then please give us a thumbs up and leave us a comment. We try to respond to all the comments we receive. We very much enjoy doing so too. Now, without further ado, let's take you to another great historical location. We are very lucky to live in the beautiful county of Cumbria, and one of the great advantages of living here is that we are only a stone's throw from the borders. Just a hop, skip and a jump up the motorway takes us into another country, Scotland. Today, we're in the region of Dumfries and Galloway, an area rich in centuries of turbulent history. The echoes of battles, skirmishes and sieges seemingly around every corner. We are here today to visit one place in particular. Hello there. Today we're at Caerlaverock Castle, so let's see what we can see, shall we? The iteration of the castle we visit today began construction in the 1270s. This was, however, the second castle to be built here. In around 1220, King Alexander II of Scotland had granted the lands at Caerlaverock to Sir John Maxwell, making him Warden of the West March. Sir John set about building his castle, a basic square structure and reportedly nothing remarkable, except that it was one of the first castles to be built in Scotland. This early castle was, however, mysteriously abandoned before completion, and Sir John's brother, Sir Aymer Maxwell, chose a spot 200 metres north of this unfinished building and began work on the triangular castle that we see today. Following its completion, Sir Aymer's son, Sir Herbert, occupied the castle. Alright, so here we go, and I've found a plaque, so let's have a look what it says. So it's the two great towers, which you saw on the way in, flank the castle gatehouse, part of an imposing entrance that also provided much needed storage and accommodation. Caerlaverock Castle sits in the Scottish borders, overlooking the Solway Firth between Cumbria in England and Dumfries and Galloway in Scotland. As such, it would have been one of the first points of defence from attack by enemies, and in the year 1300, one such enemy launched such an attack. In 1296, war had broken out between England and Scotland, and in July of 1300, King Edward I of England led an army of over 3,000 men over the border and into Scotland, stopping to mount a siege on Caerlaverock Castle. The onslaught began against the eastern gateway, and it wasn't long before Caerlaverock fell, not least because it was only being defended by a garrison of 60 men. In the words of a herald present at the siege, "Word to cease the fight was given by the constable and marshal, and the garrison submitted and delivered up the castle. Of all ranks but 60 left it. Marvelled we they were so few. Life and limb the good king spared them, and gave each a garment new. Joyous was the host in conquest, and the king his banner bade with St Edmunds and St George's and St Edwards be displayed, and with them by right established of Seagrave, Hereford, and him trusted with the keeping of the castle, Lord Clifford. Then the war-wise king directed how the army should be led, by what roads and by what passes, through the hostile land ahead. Here finishes the siege of Caerlaverock." quite interesting bits of stone here. And there's a plaque, and it says, "A piercing defence. During Caerlaverock's great sieges, defenders fired arrows to protect the castle from attackers. Arrows were shot through thin external openings called arrow slits." I've seen those before in other places. The stones on display form the bases of a type of arrow slit called a fishtail, due to their interesting shape. Let's go back and take a look at that again. The castle remained in the hands of the English until 1312, when it was reclaimed by Sir Eustace Maxwell for Scotland, when he changed his allegiance from the English king to the Scot Robert the Bruce. It was once again besieged by the English, but on this occasion held out. In 1313, the fortifications were largely dismantled to prevent English invaders from being able to use it. Sir Eustace was a fickle fellow though, and by 1337, having reoccupied the castle, he once again changed allegiance to support Edward Balliol, a potential challenger to the Scottish throne. In 1355, Caerlaverock was captured for King David II by Sir Roger Kirkpatrick of Closeburn, and the castle was, again, partly dismantled. Here we're just about to find out and have a look at Murdochs Tower. The round tower to our left contained a grim pit prison, reputedly the holding cell for Murdoch, Duke of Albany, before his execution in 1425. Pit and punishment, it says. The tower was built in the 1200s, probably as part of the castle's original defences. There was a ground floor pit prison which could only be accessed through a trapdoor above. The first floor of the tower was reached via a passage in the curtain wall, while the second floor room was entered from the ramparts. Let's go and take a quick look, shall we? See how bad it really was. Couldn't have been very nice. It was Sir Robert Maxwell who regained Caerlaverock by the end of the Wars of Independence, and he who rebuilt much of the castle between 1373 and 1410. More work was completed by Robert, second Lord Maxwell, during the mid-15th century, including reconstruction of the gatehouse as well as a new west range by the end of that century. The Maxwells were Catholics and, as such, took up the cause of Mary, Queen of Scots, following her forced abdication in 1567. As a consequence, in 1570, the castle was yet again besieged, this time by an English Protestant force led by the Earl of Sussex. It was partly demolished, including the destruction of the gatehouse with gunpowder. By the late 16th century, the Maxwells were feuding with the nearby Johnstons of Annandale. John, 8th Lord Maxwell, was killed by the Johnstons during a fight at Dryfe Sands on the 7th of December 1593. His son, the 9th Lord Maxwell, being one to hold a grudge, arranged a meeting with the laird of the Johnston family, and in 1608, in an act of revenge, shot him in the back, killing him. After this, he fled to France. Upon his return in 1612, he was arrested for this murder, as well as other killings and treason, and was beheaded at Edinburgh on the 21st of May, 1613. There we go. There's a plaque. I'm going to read for you. This apparently is the Nithsdale lodging. Apparently we are now inside the Nithsdale lodging, the 17th century residence of Robert Maxwell, Earl of Nithsdale. That's probably, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing that right or not, but... The aforementioned Maxwell's brother, Robert, was heir to Caerlaverock, as John had died childless. Robert was made Earl of Nithsdale and appointed to the Privy Council of Scotland. As a sign of his newly elevated status, he built the elaborate south and east ranges within the castle walls, known as the Nithsdale Lodging. These were completed in 1634. Now we are in the bakehouse. Oh, and there's another plaque, so let's see what it says. It says you are now in the bakehouse, where vast quantities of bread were baked to feed the Maxwells' enormous household. This is the service quarters, and it said that the bread was the staple diet of the castle residents, and with each person eating up to 2 loaves a day. That's quite a lot. The dome-shaped beehive oven in the corner of the room was warmed with burning peat or wood. Once the oven was hot enough, the ashes were cleared out and dough was baked inside for about 2 hours. So they were constantly knocking out bread all the time. Wow. Must have been a great smell. Caerlaverock, it would seem, was not destined to be left in peace, and in 1640 it was once again besieged, this time by the Protestant Covenanter army. The siege went on for 13 weeks, after which the Maxwells were forced to surrender. It is said that, whilst the Earl and Countess of Nithsdale were allowed to leave, along with their page, 40 defenders by the name of Maxwell were all put to the sword. The south wall and tower were demolished, and the castle was never occupied again. Right. There we go. Off a staircase to a tight back passage. Hopefully, it's got a bloody rope to hang on to. Usually I fall down these things. Anyway, let's carry on. Onwards and upwards. That'll do that. We've no ghost stories to tell you of Caerlaverock Castle, but with a history of so much bloodshed, we feel sure there must be a few, and there was certainly an eerie atmosphere within the ground. We will leave you to decide for yourselves. Thanks again for watching.